Hello everyone, it is time for me to rank another season of the Twilight Zone. This time I will be telling you my top 10 favorite episodes from season 3. Now season 3 might very well be my favorite season of the entire TV show, and so it was very hard to compile a list of only 10 favorites. In fact, I'm going to cheat and include an honorable mention as well. The reason I'm including this honorable mention is because it's actually the last Twilight Zone episode I ever saw for the first time. It is Once Upon a Time starring Buster Keaton. I had to at least include this as an honorable mention because this is an episode that you will appreciate, especially if you have seen movies with Buster Keaton in them. Now, in preparation for this episode, I didn't want to just like turn it on and watch it. I wanted to kind of prepare myself because I had an idea of what the plot was. And so what I did is I watched two Buster Keaton movies, Sherlock Jr. and The General. First time ever seeing them, loved both of them. It made this episode that much more enjoyable because it follows a janitor from the year 1890, takes place in a silent movie era, and then he goes to the future to 1960, and that's when you hear him talk, and he's in a sound era. There's lots of noise, there's cars on the road. It's a crazy episode, but it's one of those episodes that you'll appreciate, especially if you're really into Buster Keaton. For someone like me who just appreciates silent movies in general, and now Buster Keaton, I really love this episode and I had to include it as an honorable mention. Coming in at number 10, I have The Trade-Ins. This is such a sweet episode on true love. An elderly couple apply to be made young again, but only have enough money for one to be made young. The decision process is emotional and the ending is even more so. This is the Twilight Zone episode that you want to watch to be touched, to really feel the impact of true love. Kick the Can is screaming nostalgia. I mean, nostalgia is something that everyone can relate to in life. We all look back at a memory or an experience or whatever it may be and have warm feelings towards that. In recent years, I've discovered that I love a good movie or story for this matter with an elderly lead. I think it's because they're so wise and just like well in their years, and this episode showing the elderly get a second chance at being a kid again, it's just so heartwarming. Also, I promise not every episode on this list is about an elderly person being young again. In Nothing in the Dark, an old woman has fought with death several times and has always won, but now she finds herself afraid to let a wounded policeman in her door for fear he is Mr. Death. For starters, it has Robert Redford as a very young actor, and so it's cool to see him acting this young in his career. I also just love the premise. There is so much uncertainty that backs up this episode. I mentioned Robert Redford, but I also have to mention Gladys Cooper, the other main star of this episode. She is a veteran to the Twilight Zone. I have seen her in several episodes of the show. I also think that this episode wraps up very nicely. This one is definitely one of my favorites. Number 7 goes to The Gift. Not many seem to love this one, but I think it has a lot of good to it. A man from the stars comes with a gift to a small Mexican village whose residents do not welcome this stranger. The episode sheds a lot of light on stubbornness and being closed-minded. The reveal at the end of the episode of what the gift is makes this episode so much more deep, and it makes me like it a lot more too. There are also a lot of Christianic themes tied into this episode's story, and I also like that too. The Twilight Zone is always so good at being deep, philosophical, and having themes that we're familiar with, and this episode definitely succeeds at that. 5 characters in search of an exit comes in at number 6. An army major awakens in a small room with no idea of who he is or how he got there. He finds 4 other people in the same room, and they all begin to question how they each arrived there, and more importantly, how to escape. Personally, I think that this is one of the greatest Twilight Zone twists in the entire show. First off, it opens with a plot and a premise that you are so confused about, you just keep wondering to yourself, how is this possible? How do they not know who they are? How do they not know where they are? And then by the time you see the reveal, it all makes sense and it just wraps up perfectly. I'm not going to spoil the ending here, however, just know that the ending to this episode is what makes it so high on my list. The Changing of the Guard is about a teacher who is forced to retire and who contemplates suicide when he doesn't feel he's made a difference in the world. I am an absolute sucker on a story that includes a character reflecting on one's life, especially when it has that wonderful life ending. And what I mean by that is some sort of character is celebrated for the great things that they have done in their lifetime. Even though they may feel they're worthless, other people do not feel that way. This episode gave me everything that I was expecting, knowing the plot, and I really just enjoy it. Plus, it has a familiar face starring Donald Pleasance. A suburban dinner party is interrupted by a bulletin warning of an impending nuclear attack. As the neighbors scramble to prepare themselves, they turn against the one family that installed a permanent bomb shelter. The Shelter is an episode that I especially love for the same reasons that I love the episode The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, because it shows the true side of humans. It shows that even your friends, at the end of the day, all they really care about is the attitude of every man for himself. I really like the way this episode plays out, and it does what Twilight Zone does best, and that is showing man's true nature in stressful situations. Coming in at number 3, I have The Hunt, which is an episode I like for a number of reasons. Upon returning from a hunting trip, Hyder Simpson discovers that no one can see or hear him because he has passed away. This is another Twilight Zone episode that really gets me because it's just so heartwarming. There are no big sci-fi moments or not really any suspense involved. However, it's just a man, his dog, and the afterlife. As someone who loves dogs and is a Christian, I really love this episode. At my number 2, I have one of the most iconic episodes of the entire series Twilight Zone. That is It's a Good Life. I love the way this episode is introduced. You see a family living in a rural area. It seems like life is perfect. However, they all are traumatized by a monster that is living in their presence. You find out in the intro that the monster is not what you're expecting. It's actually a young boy. This young boy has superpowers with his mind where he can control whatever he wants, and that is the scariest thing about this episode. Everyone around him acts their very best because they all want to stay on his good side. Otherwise, they'll be wished into the cornfield. I really love this episode because it shows you just what it looks like for a community to be living in such fear. A fear that if they say the wrong thing or if they do the wrong thing, they will be sent to the cornfield, or in other words, cursed forever, basically. Billy Mummy appeared in 3 Twilight Zone episodes, but to me, he shines brightest in this one. And my favorite episode for season 3 of the Twilight Zone is Death's Head Revisited. It follows a German SS captain returning to a concentration camp. He begins reminiscing on the power he enjoyed there until he finds himself on trial by those who died at his hands. This is possibly the most mature Twilight Zone episode I've ever seen. The plot says it all, however, it's the history that we know going into the episode that really makes it a powerful watch. In addition to this, we get amazing performances by both of the leads of this episode. Minor spoilers here, nothing too big, but something I love about this episode so much is the writing. I love how the ultimate decision for this person who deserves so much worse than what he actually gets, it's not revenge, it's simply justice. I love the way that that was written. I also love how this ghost who comes to visit him, this one that was tortured by him as a concentration camp victim, he declares that he is not his judge, however, God is the ultimate judge of them all. Really powerful episode, very mature, and just really strong every time I watch it. Those are my 10 favorite episodes from Twilight Zone Season 3. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite episodes were in the comments below. I look forward to reading them. Have a great day.